The massive ship called Eternal Reach floated in the darkness of space like a small metal city. Inside its walls, thousands of different alien species worked together as part of the Galactic Coalition. Some had 6 arms, others had scales like diamonds, and a few could read minds just by thinking hard enough. They all served one purpose: to keep peace in the galaxy and explore the unknown regions of space. Captain Tamian walked through the corridors with steady steps. He was human, which meant he looked pretty ordinary compared to most beings on the ship. 2 arms, 2 legs, no claws, no armor plating on his skin, and definitely no ability to shoot fire from his eyes. The other species often wondered why humans were even allowed in the coalition. They seemed so fragile, so weak, so utterly harmless. That morning, the entire ship buzzed with activity. They had found something strange at the edge of explored space. A massive station floating alone in the void. Nobody knew who built it or when. The energy readings coming from it made no sense at all. The science teams argued about what the numbers meant, but everyone agreed on one thing. Whatever technology created that station was far more advanced than anything the Coalition had ever seen. Commander Yule stood in the briefing room, his 6 powerful arms crossed over his armored chest. He was a Krethian, a species bred for war. His people had conquered 12 star systems before joining the Coalition. They respected strength above all else, and they did not respect humans very much at all. "We will send an exploration team," Yule announced to the gathered officers. His voice sounded like grinding metal. "Standard protocol. All member species must be represented." Several officers groaned quietly. Standard protocol meant humans had to come along, even though everyone knew they would probably just get in the way or need rescuing. But rules were rules. Taman raised his hand calmly. "I volunteer to represent humanity." Yule looked at him with all 4 of his eyes. 2 eyes showed annoyance. The other 2 showed something closer to pity. "Very well, Captain. Try not to die. The paperwork is terrible." Before the briefing ended, they ran the standard security scans. Every officer had to pass through the biological threat assessment system. It was an advanced machine that could detect how dangerous each species was based on thousands of factors: strength, speed, natural weapons, psionic ability, toxin production, and much more. When the Krethian warriors walked through, the machine flashed red and displayed high threat, extreme caution. When the Vorn psychics passed through, it showed moderate threat, mental manipulation possible. Even the small Ultech specialists registered as low moderate threat, cybernetic enhancements detected. Then Taman walked through the scanner. It beeped once and displayed in calm green letters, non-threat, minimal concern. One of the Vorn psychics laughed, the sound like chimes in wind. "The humans always register as harmless. It makes me wonder why they bother with these scans at all." Tamin smiled politely and said nothing. He had seen that reading hundreds of times. Everyone assumed the scanner was accurate. Why would it not be? Machines did not lie. Humans had no claws, no venom, no thick hide, no natural weapons whatsoever. By every physical measure, they were the weakest species in the Coalition. Dr. Hana joined the team shortly after. She was another human, a scientist who studied alien biology. She was young and always curious about everything. When she passed through the scanner, it gave the same reading: non-threat. She grinned at Taman. Another day of being completely harmless. The team gathered in the docking bay where their shuttle waited. Besides Taman and Hana, there were 4 Krethian warriors in full combat armor, 2 Vorn psychics with their crystalline skin shimmering, and 3 Ultech specialists whose bodies were half organic and half machine. It was a strong team, designed to handle any danger they might find. As they boarded the shuttle, Taman studied the display showing images of the derelict station. Something about its shape bothered him. The architecture looked wrong somehow. The angles did not quite make sense. Corridors seemed to curve in directions that should not exist. Rooms appeared to be larger on the inside than the outside should allow. "Interesting design," he said casually. Commander Yule glanced at the display. "It is alien. Of course it looks strange." "No, I mean the builders thought differently about space-time," Taman continued. "See how these support structures bend? They are not following standard 3-dimensional engineering. It is like they built in 4 dimensions and then tried to squeeze it into 3. The entire shuttle went quiet. All eyes turned to Taman. The Vorn psychic named Rick stepped closer, her crystalline face reflecting the shuttle lights. How can you possibly determine that from a simple scan? Our best scientists have been analyzing these images for days. Taemin shrugged. Humans have an intuition for these things, I guess. He smiled again. That same calm, friendly smile, and then every light in the shuttle flickered. Just for a fraction of a second, everything went dark. Then the lights came back on as if nothing had happened. The Ultech specialist immediately checked his instruments. Minor power fluctuation. Nothing serious. Probably just interference from the station's energy field. But Envoy Rix kept staring at Taemin. Something felt wrong, though she could not explain what. The human had just made an impossible observation, smiled, and reality itself seemed to hiccup. It was probably just coincidence. Had to be coincidence. The shuttle detached from the eternal reach and moved toward the derelict station. As they got closer, the energy readings became even stranger. The numbers on the screens kept changing, sometimes increasing, sometimes decreasing, with no clear pattern. It was as if the station itself could not decide how much energy it wanted to produce. Dr. Hana watched the readings with fascination. This is remarkable. The energy signature is fluctuating across 17 different quantum states simultaneously. That should not be possible. Many things should not be possible, Commander Yule growled. That is why we explore, to learn what is actually possible. The shuttle docked with the station using magnetic clamps. The team put on their protective suits and checked their equipment one final time. The Krethian warriors activated their plasma rifles. The Vorn psychics closed their eyes and extended their mental awareness. The Ultech specialists booted up their scanning equipment. Taemin and Hana simply checked their oxygen supplies and picked up basic toolkits. They had no weapons, no special abilities, no cybernetic enhancements. Just two ordinary humans about to walk into the most advanced and mysterious structure ever discovered. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it lay a dark corridor that seemed to twist in ways that hurt to look at. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with light that was not quite any color anyone could name. Commander Yule stepped through first, his warriors flanking him with weapons ready. Stay close. Stay alert. If anything moves, report it immediately. The team moved into the station. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was bouncing off walls that were not there. The corridor curved and twisted, leading them deeper into the structure. Every sensor they carried started showing conflicting data. Gravity felt normal, but the instrument said it was changing every few seconds. The air was breathable, but scans indicated it should not exist at all. And through it all, Captain Taemin walked calmly forward, that slight smile never leaving his face. He looked like a man taking a casual stroll through a park, not exploring an impossible alien station at the edge of known space. Every scanner still read him as non-threat. But deep in the station's heart, something ancient and terrible began to wake up. It had been waiting for a very long time. It had been waiting for something specific. It had been waiting for humans. The corridors inside the station made no sense at all. Commander Yule had fought in 3 major wars and explored dozens of dangerous locations, but nothing had prepared him for this place. The walls seemed to shift when nobody was looking directly at them. Doorways led to rooms that felt bigger than the entire station should be. Sometimes when they walked forward, the corridor behind them disappeared completely, replaced by solid wall. One of the Krethian warriors stopped suddenly and grabbed his helmet. Commander, my targeting system just failed. It is trying to lock onto something that is both in front of me and behind me at the same time. The other warriors checked their equipment and found the same problem. Their advanced combat systems, designed to handle any battlefield situation, were completely useless here. The computers kept crashing and rebooting over and over again. The Vorn psychics had it even worse. Rix fell to her knees, clutching her crystalline head. The other Vorn grabbed her shoulders to steady her. What is wrong? This place, Rix gasped. It screams in colors that should not exist. I can hear thoughts from things that are not alive. The walls are thinking. The floor remembers. Make it stop. Please make it stop. The Ultech specialists fared no better. Their cybernetic implants sparked and smoked. One of them tore his optical enhancement right out of his skull, because it kept showing him impossible images that made his brain hurt. Emergency medical foam sealed the wound, but he looked terrified. Recommendation, the lead Ultech said, his voice shaking. We should abort this mission immediately. This environment is hostile to all Coalition technology and biology. Commander Yule wanted to agree. Every instinct told him to run. But he was a warrior, and warriors did not run from anything. We continue. Stay together. Keep moving forward. Then he noticed something strange. Captain Timon and Dr. Hana were walking through the impossible corridors as if they were taking a tour of a museum. They showed no sign of discomfort at all. They were not confused by the geometry. They did not clutch their heads in pain. They simply walked calmly forward, occasionally stopping to examine interesting features. Human, Yule called out. You are not affected? Timon turned and looked genuinely surprised by the question. Affected by what? By this. Yule gestured at everything around them. The impossible architecture, the shifting walls, the screaming colors that the Vorn keep talking about. How are you not driven mad? Dr. Hana stepped closer and spoke in a gentle voice like someone explaining something obvious to a child. Commander, humans evolved on Earth. Our planet never made much sense either. We learned to deal with it. What do you mean your planet made no sense? Hana smiled. We have weather that can kill you in minutes. We have tiny invisible creatures that cause disease. We have radiation from space that we cannot see or feel. We have natural disasters that strike without warning. And our own brains lie to us constantly, filling in gaps in our perception with made-up information. Humans learned to live in a universe that was always trying to confuse us. We got good at ignoring the parts that did not make sense and focusing on the parts that did. One of the Crethean warriors laughed bitterly. So you just pretend the impossible things are not happening? Not pretend, Timon corrected. We acknowledge them and then we move past them. Our brains are very good at taking chaotic information and forcing it into patterns we can understand. It is a survival trait. Commander Yule wanted to argue, but he could not. The evidence stood before him. Two fragile humans with no armor and no weapons were the only members of the team functioning normally in this nightmare place. They continued deeper into the station. The environment became even more hostile. In one room, gravity pointed in 6 different directions at once. The coalition team members floated helplessly or clung to whatever surfaces they could find. Meanwhile, Timon and Hana simply walked across the floor as if down was still down. How? Rix demanded, still clutching her aching head. How are you doing that? Doing what? Hana asked, walking normally. The gravity here is impossible. Hana looked down at her feet, then back at Rix. I am just walking. I do not feel anything strange. Maybe your species are too sensitive. Humans are not very sensitive to these things. They entered another corridor and found it filled with floating symbols that glowed with sickly light. The symbols hurt to look at. They were letters and numbers from no known language, arranging themselves into equations that made mathematics scream in protest. The Ultec who still had his implants tried to scan them and immediately collapsed, bleeding from his nose. Timon walked right through the cloud of symbols without hesitation. They drifted around him like harmless butterflies. When he emerged on the other side, he brushed one symbol off his shoulder the way someone might brush away dust. Interesting writing system, he commented. Very dense information storage. The team followed, but everyone except the humans suffered. Their minds rebelled against the symbols. Their bodies felt wrong, like they were being turned inside out at the cellular level. Only the 2 humans seemed perfectly fine. Finally, they reached the core of the station. The chamber was massive, far larger than the station's exterior dimensions should allow. In the center floated an object that defied description. It was a sphere, but also a cube, but also something with too many sides to count. It glowed and it absorbed light simultaneously. It was solid and it was made of pure energy. It existed and it did not exist at the same time. Commander Yule felt his mind starting to crack just looking at it. The object was wrong in ways that reality should not permit. It was a violation of everything he understood about the universe. The Vorn psychics screamed and collapsed. Their minds could not process what they were seeing. The Crethean warriors backed away, their weapon hands trembling. The remaining Ultec specialists shut down their optical sensors completely, choosing blindness over madness. What is that thing? Yule whispered. Dr. Hana tilted her head and studied the object with calm scientific interest. Quantum superposition device, maybe. It seems to exist in multiple states at once. The basic concept is simple enough. Elementary particles do this all the time. Someone just figured out how to scale it up to macro objects. Simple? Yule could barely form words. That thing is breaking my mind and you call it simple? Well, the math is complicated, Hana admitted. But the idea is simple. Something can be two things at once until you observe it and force it to pick one state. Happens in our universe all the time at the quantum level. Taemin approached the object without fear. He walked right up to it, close enough to touch. Everyone else in the room felt their sanity slipping away just being in the same chamber with that thing. But the human captain showed no concern at all. The station began to shake. Reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. Walls phased in and out of existence. Time flowed backward in some parts of the room, making objects age and then grow young again. One of the Cretan warriors watched in horror as his rifle transformed into something else, then something else again, cycling through forms that made no sense. "We need to leave," Envoy Rick screamed. "Now. This entire station is collapsing. Reality itself is breaking down." Taemin did not move. He stared at the impossible object with a strange expression on his face. Recognition, maybe, like he was seeing something familiar for the first time in a long while. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a reassuring smile. It was the smile of someone who understood something terrible and found it almost funny. The moment his face changed, every scanner on every suit suddenly activated on its own. Alert sounds filled the chamber. Warning lights flashed red, and on every display screen the same message appeared. Human threat level. Recalculating. Error. Recalculating. Error. Does not compute. Recalculating. The lights in the chamber flickered, not just the artificial lights from their equipment. Reality itself flickered like a broken image. For one impossible moment, everything in the room existed in two states at once. Normal and something else, something that hurt to perceive. Then it snapped back to normal, well, as normal as an impossible alien station could be. But everyone had seen it. Everyone had felt it. And everyone now stared at Captain Taemin with new eyes. The scanners still tried to calculate his threat level. The screens kept showing errors and recalculations. The machines, which had confidently declared humans non-threat for generations, suddenly could not decide what humans were at all. Commander Yule's voice shook when he spoke. "What are you?" Taemin turned to face him. That smile was still there, but now it looked different. Now it looked dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with claws or weapons or physical strength. "We are exactly what your scanners always said we were. Commander, non-threat, we mean you no harm." "Then why are all our systems going crazy?" "Because," Dr. Hana said softly, "your systems just realized they were measuring the wrong thing." Captain Taemin reached toward the impossible object floating in the center of the chamber. Everyone held their breath. The thing that existed in multiple states at once, that made reality scream just by being there, that had driven the Vorn psychics unconscious and crashed every piece of advanced technology in the room. His hand passed right through its outer boundary without triggering any response. The object, which should have been untouchable, responded to him. It shifted slightly as if recognizing something. Taemin moved his hands in slow patterns and the object followed his movements like a trained animal. Commander Yule felt something cold settle into his stomach. "How are you controlling it?" "I am not controlling it," Taemin said calmly. "I am just showing it what I want. It understands." Dr. Hana pulled up a portable display and began accessing the station's ancient logs. The database was corrupted and written in languages that predated the Coalition by millions of years, but somehow she could read parts of it. "Oh," she said quietly. "Oh, that explains everything." "Explain what?" Rix demanded. The Vorn psychic had recovered enough to stand, but she kept her mental barriers locked tight. She refused to perceive the quantum object directly. "Explain why humans can function in this place when every other species cannot." "We are not a young species," Hana said, scrolling through data streams. "The Coalition thinks humans just recently achieved spaceflight, that we are new to the galaxy. But that is not quite right." She turned the display so everyone could see. Ancient star charts appeared showing Earth's solar system billions of years ago. But the coordinates were wrong. Earth was not where it should be. It sat in a region of space marked with symbols that the translation software struggled to interpret. The closest approximation it could manage was reality weak zone. Millions of years ago, Earth existed in a part of the galaxy where the barriers between dimensions were thin, Hana continued, where normal physics barely applied, where reality itself was soft and changeable. Life evolved there anyway, but it had to adapt to survive in a place where the universe kept forgetting its own rules. One of the Cretan warriors laughed nervously. You are saying humans evolved in a hell dimension? No. We evolved in a place where reality was negotiable. Our brains developed a unique trait. We unconsciously impose our perception of reality onto the universe around us. When we see something impossible, our minds do not break. Instead, we force reality to make sense. We are walking reality anchors. Commander Yule shook his head. That is insane. You cannot just force reality to obey you. We do it all the time, Taemin said. He had not stopped manipulating the quantum object. Humans see faces in clouds. We find patterns in random noise. We take chaotic events and force them into coherent stories. When our memories conflict with our beliefs, we rewrite our memories to match what we think should be true. Other species think these are mental flaws. They are not. They are weapons. Dr. Hana pulled up more ancient records. Images appeared showing massive structures similar to the station they were on. Hundreds of them, scattered across the galaxy. These stations were built by a race called the Architects. They existed when the universe was young and reality had not settled into stable laws yet. The Architects created these stations as prisons for things from other dimensions. Things that violated physics. Things that should not exist. And they put these prisons everywhere, Yule asked. They put them in stable regions of space where reality was strong, Hana confirmed. They used technology to lock away anything that came from the chaotic outer dimensions, where the universe had not decided what rules to follow. The Architects died out eons ago, but their prisons remained, locked and secure, until recently. What changed recently? Humans started exploring space, Taemin said simply. We moved Earth, well, not moved it exactly. But over millions of years, our solar system drifted out of the reality weak zone and into normal, stable space. We evolved into our current form in that transition period. And when we finally built ships and started exploring, we brought something with us. We brought the ability to make reality soft again. The implications hit Commander Yule like a physical blow. You are saying that humans being near these stations is causing them to unlock? Not on purpose, Hana said quickly. We do not mean to do it. But yes, our presence makes reality more flexible. These prisons were designed to hold things in a universe with rigid physical laws. When humans show up, those laws become suggestions. The locks stop working properly. Envoy Rick stepped forward, her crystalline body trembling. The object in this room. What is it? A reality anchor generator, Taemin said. The Architects built it to stabilize local spacetime. Or destabilize it, depending on how you use it. With this device, you could rewrite the laws of physics for an entire star system. Make gravity stronger or weaker. Change the speed of light. Make time flow backward. Anything you want. And you can control it? Yule's voice cracked slightly. Yes, one word. Spoken calmly. But it changed everything. The Krathian commander took a step back. His 6 arms hung uselessly at his sides. You're telling me that humans are walking reality bombs. That you can make the universe forget its own rules. That your very existence is a threat to the natural order. Not forget, Dr. Hana corrected gently. Remind. Commander, your species and every other species in the coalition evolved in stable regions of space. You think the universe has always followed neat, predictable rules. But it has not. The laws of physics you take for granted are only about 13 billion years old. Before that, reality was much stranger. Much more flexible. The universe just settled into these current rules and everyone forgot it did not have to work this way. And humans remember? Our DNA remembers, Taemin said. Deep in our genetic code, there are instructions for surviving in a universe that makes no sense. When we encounter something impossible, those old instructions activate. We do not panic. We just insist that reality should work the way we expect it to. And usually reality agrees. The station shook again. More entities were bleeding through from other dimensions now. Things made of mathematical concepts. Beings that existed as living contradictions. Creatures from places where different laws applied. They were attracted to the destabilized reality around the quantum device. One of these entities manifested in the chamber. It was a thing of teeth and angles that hurt to look at. It existed in 4 spatial dimensions, which meant parts of it were always folded through space that should be empty. It screamed in a frequency that made molecules want to stop moving. The Krathian warriors opened fire immediately. Their plasma bolts passed right through the entity without effect. How do you shoot something that does not exist entirely in 3-dimensional space? The entity moved toward them. Reality warped around it. One warrior was suddenly a child. Another aged 50 years in an instant. A third simply ceased to have ever existed at all. and everyone's memories adjusted so they could not remember there had ever been 5 warriors instead of 4. Commander Yule stood frozen in terror. His weapons were useless. His armor meant nothing. The thing was going to kill them all, and there was nothing he could do about it. Then Captain Taemin stepped between the entity and the coalition team. He did not have a weapon. He did not activate any shield. He just stood there and looked at the impossible creature, and he refused to acknowledge it existed. It was not denial exactly. It was something stranger than that. Taemin looked at the entity the way someone might look at a hallucination. His brain simply categorized it as not real and moved on. And because his brain worked that way, because humans were reality anchors, the universe listened. The entity began to destabilize. It flickered between existence and non-existence. Its impossible geometry started collapsing into normal 3-dimensional space. It was not dying. It was being forced to follow rules it never had to follow before. Within seconds, the entity had transformed into something almost normal. A strange creature, yes, but one that existed properly in 3 dimensions. One that could be hurt by conventional weapons. Now, Taemin said calmly. The Crethean warriors fired again. This time their plasma bolts struck home. The entity shuddered and dissolved into particles of light. Commander Yule stared at Taemin with something approaching awe and terror mixed together. You did not fight it. You just made it stop being impossible. I made it follow the rules, Taemin agreed. The same rules everything else follows. But you decided what those rules were. No, the universe decided. I just reminded it what decision it made billions of years ago. More entities were coming through. The station's alarms blared. Reality was tearing like old fabric. Commander Yule realized with growing horror that what they had just witnessed was not a solution. It was a demonstration. Humans were not soldiers or scientists or diplomats. They were something the coalition had never encountered before, and had no words to describe. They were the only beings who could look at a broken universe and force it to fix itself. The situation spiraled out of control within hours. The station was fully awake now, and its ancient systems activated one by one. Dimensional rifts opened throughout the structure. More entities poured through from places where reality worked differently. Some were made of concepts instead of matter. Others existed across time in ways that made them impossible to fight. A few were living violations of mathematics itself. Commander Yule sent an emergency signal to the Eternal Reach. The coalition responded with overwhelming force. Dozens of warships arrived, bringing their most powerful weapons and their best soldiers. Crethean battle cruisers, Vorn mine ships, Ultec drone carriers, and vessels from 20 other species. None of it mattered. How do you kill something that exists before it is born? How do you defend against an attack that happens in reverse time? How do you shoot an entity made of pure logic that cannot be harmed because it proves mathematically that harm is impossible? The coalition forces died in ways that should not be possible. Ships aged into dust in seconds. Warriors found themselves unborn, erased from history. Entire crews had their minds rewritten so they forgot how to operate their own vessels. Reality itself had become the enemy, and conventional warfare meant nothing against it. On the bridge of the Eternal Reach, the senior officers watched their forces get destroyed with growing panic. Envoy Rick stood before the command council, her crystalline body dim with exhaustion. She had just returned from the station, and her report made everyone sick with fear. The humans did what? Admiral Kane demanded. He was a veteran of 50 campaigns, leader of the coalition fleet, and right now he looked like a frightened child. Captain Taemin and Dr. Hana stood their ground against the dimensional entities. Rix repeated. They did not fight them. They refused to accept they existed, and reality agreed with the humans instead of the entities. The creatures either stabilized into something normal or simply ceased to be. That is impossible. Yes, Admiral, it should be impossible. But I watched it happen. Humans are reality anchors. They make the universe follow rules just by observing it. They evolved in a place where physics barely applied, and they learned to survive by imposing their perception of reality onto their environment. Now they do it unconsciously, all the time, wherever they go. The council chamber fell silent. Every officer present understood what this meant. The implications were terrifying. We need more humans, Commander Yule said. He had barely survived the station, and his body showed signs of temporal aging from a near miss with one of the entities. They are the only ones who can fight these things. Admiral Kane shook his massive head. Absolutely not. If what you are saying is true, then humans are the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They can rewrite reality itself. Do you understand what that means? Every law of physics, every natural constant, every fundamental truth about the universe becomes negotiable if humans decide it should be different. They do not do it on purpose, Rick said. That makes it worse. Kane slammed one of his 3 fists on the table. At least if they did it deliberately, we could reason with them, negotiate limits, establish boundaries. But if they change reality unconsciously, then we have no control over it at all. Today they help us. Tomorrow they might accidentally unmake existence because one of them has a bad dream. The council erupted into arguments. Some officers wanted to destroy the humans immediately before they became too dangerous. Others insisted humanity was necessary to fight the dimensional threats. A few suggested trying to contain or control the humans somehow, treating them as weapons rather than citizens. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, more dimensional breaches opened across Coalition space. The ancient prisons built by the architects were failing. Whatever had been locked away for millions of years was finally breaking free, and conventional forces could not stop it. Captain Taemin requested permission to address the council. Admiral Kane reluctantly agreed, though he ordered a full security team to surround the human captain. Not that security would help if Taemin decided to do something impossible. Taemin stood calmly before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He looked small and fragile compared to them. Any one of the council members could kill him with their bare hands. But everyone now knew that physical strength meant nothing compared to what humans could do. I understand your fear, Taemin began. You have just learned that reality is not as stable as you believed. That the laws of physics you trust are really just agreements the universe made with itself. And yes, humans can renegotiate those agreements, but we are not your enemy. Prove it, Admiral Kane growled. I cannot prove what we will do in the future, but I can offer you this. Let humanity do what we apparently evolved to do. Make us guardians of the reality weak zones. Let us police the borders between stable space and the chaotic outer dimensions. Let us handle the threats that your technology and evolution never prepared you for. You want us to give you free rein to warp reality however you want? One council member asked incredulously. No. I want you to let us stabilize reality where it is breaking down. Your species have warriors and scientists and diplomats. Let humans be your monster hunters. We are the only ones who can look at impossible things and make them stop being impossible. Commander Yule stepped forward. I do not like this human. I do not trust him. But he is right. We need them. The dimensional breaches are accelerating. Thousands of them across Coalition territory. Maybe millions. We cannot fight these entities with conventional means. We need humans to make reality solid again before everything we know gets torn apart. Dr. Hana, who had been quiet until now, added her voice. We did not choose to be this way. We did not ask to evolve in a place where reality was broken, but we did, and we survived. Now the galaxy is becoming like ancient Earth. The universe is remembering that it does not have to follow its own rules, and you need beings who can remind it that following rules is better than chaos. A junior officer from the intelligence division raised a concerning point. If humans can stabilize reality, can they also destabilize it? Could you make all of Coalition space as chaotic as that station? Taemin was quiet for a moment before answering. Yes. If enough humans tried, if we really focused on it, we could probably make reality fall apart across a huge area. But why would we want to do that? We like stable reality. We prefer universes that make sense. Chaos is what we evolved to escape, not what we want to spread. But you could, Admiral Kane pressed. That is the point. You could unmake everything we have built, everything we are, with just a thought. Every species can destroy things if they really want to, Hana said. Your species have weapons that can crack planets. The Vorn have telepathy that could drive billions insane. The Ultec could release viruses that would kill entire worlds. Every advanced civilization has the power to cause terrible harm. You choose not to use that power because you are civilized. Give us the same chance. The council adjourned to debate in private. Captain Taemin and Dr. Hana waited outside, guarded by nervous security forces who were no longer sure if they were guards or prisoners. The two humans sat quietly and did not seem worried about the decision. Do you think they will agree? Hana asked softly. They do not have much choice, Taemin replied. The dimensional breaches are getting worse. Every hour, more entities cross over. More of reality becomes unstable. The Coalition is very good at many things, but they cannot fight a broken universe. They need us whether they like it or not. Hours passed, then alarms blared throughout the eternal reach. Every screen activated at once, showing emergency broadcasts. New dimensional breaches were opening across Coalition space. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The ancient prisons were failing completely now. On the main view screen, everyone watched in horror as a massive rift opened near a populated Coalition world called Sanctuary 7. The planet was home to 18 billion beings from 40 different species. And through the rift, something vast began to emerge. It was too large to comprehend fully. Parts of it existed in more dimensions than the sensors could detect. It was made of teeth and eyes and angles that violated geometry. It screamed in frequencies that made stars flicker. Reality warped around it like water circling a drain. Coalition defense forces engaged immediately. Thousands of ships opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Their attacks passed through the entity like light through glass. The thing did not even notice them. One sweep of its impossible appendages and 300 Coalition vessels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased, removed from reality so completely that everyone forgot they had ever been built. Admiral Kane stared at the view screen. His voice was hollow when he spoke. Get the humans. Get all of them. Every human in Coalition space. Get them to Sanctuary 7 now. Commander Yule turned to Taemin. Can you stop that thing? The human captain studied the entity on the screen. It was the size of a moon and violated every law of physics just by existing. It was impossible. It should not be real. Taemin smiled that dangerous smile again. Give me a few hundred other humans and yes, I think we can stop it. Or at least make it followable by rules. Once it is playing by normal physics, your weapons will work. A few hundred humans? Against that? Reality is not about size, Commander. It is about consensus. Get me enough human observers and we will show that thing what the universe actually looks like when it follows its own laws. The choice had been made, not by debate or vote, but by necessity. The Coalition needed humans, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity really meant when they insisted reality makes sense. The dimensional horror near Sanctuary 7 was eating reality itself. Every second it existed in normal space, the laws of physics weakened around it. Stars nearby began burning in impossible colors. Planets aged millions of years in minutes. Time flowed backward in some regions, causing Coalition ships to suddenly unfire their weapons and retreat in reverse. Admiral Kane watched his fleet die. Nothing they did made any difference. The entity was too large, too impossible, too fundamentally wrong for conventional warfare. It existed across 17 different dimensions simultaneously. How do you fight something when only a tiny fraction of it even touches your reality? Captain Taemin stood on the bridge of the Eternal Reach and broadcast a message to every human ship, station, and outpost in Coalition space. His words were simple and direct. This is Captain Taemin to all humans. You have seen the threat. You know what we can do. The Coalition needs us to be what we are. Not warriors, not scientists, but reality anchors. Remember what we evolved from. Remember what we survived. Reality needs us to remind it how to be solid, how to make sense, how to follow rules instead of falling into chaos. Every human who can should come to Sanctuary 7. We have work to do. The response was immediate. Across thousands of light years, humans dropped what they were doing and headed for Sanctuary 7. Colony ships changed course. Research vessels abandoned their projects. Even civilian transports carrying human families turned around and accelerated toward the battle. Commander Yule watched the tactical display in disbelief. They are not warships. Most of those vessels are not even armed. What are they planning? We are not planning anything, Dr. Hana said. She stood beside him, calm and focused. We are just going to observe. That is all we need to do. Observe? Observation will save a planet? When humans observe something, reality stabilizes around us. One human has a small effect. 100 humans have a larger effect. A few thousand humans all looking at the same impossible thing and refusing to accept it as impossible? That changes everything. 200 human vessels converged on Sanctuary 7. They were not impressive ships. No massive weapons. No advanced shields. No special technology at all. Just ordinary transport vessels carrying ordinary humans. By Coalition standards, they were pathetic. Any single Crethean battlecruiser could destroy the entire fleet. But numbers mattered now. Not ship numbers, human numbers. Each vessel carried hundreds or thousands of humans. In total, nearly 1 million human beings were converging on the dimensional horror. The human fleet formed a loose sphere around the entity, maintaining what the coalition officers thought was a suicidally close distance. Any one sweep of the creature's appendages could wipe out dozens of ships. But Captain Taman had calculated carefully. They needed to be close enough for human observation to have maximum effect. All humans, Taman broadcast. Look at it. Really look at it. See what it is. See what it thinks it can do. And then refuse to accept it. This is our reality now. The universe follows our rules here. That thing does not belong. It violates everything that should be true. So we are going to insist it follow the same laws everything else follows. On my mark. 1 million humans stared at the dimensional horror. 1 million pairs of eyes observed the impossible thing and found it unacceptable. 1 million human brains, evolved to force reality into sensible patterns, activated their ancient defense mechanisms all at once. Private Dai Jung was aboard one of the transport ships. He was young, barely 20 years old, and terrified. But he looked at the entity on the view screen and thought very clearly, "No, you are not supposed to be here. This is our reality now. You need to follow our rules or leave." It was not a prayer. It was not a wish. It was an insistence, a demand made by a brain that had learned over millions of years that reality was negotiable. And across the human fleet, thousands of others had the same thought at the same moment. The dimensional horror flinched. It was a tiny reaction, barely perceptible. But every sensor on every coalition ship detected it. The entity, which had been immune to every weapon fired at it, which had ignored the largest fleet ever assembled, which had treated reality itself as a suggestion, had just reacted to human observation. It felt that, Commander Yule whispered in awe. 1 million unarmed humans just stared at it, and it felt pain. The entity tried to move away from the human fleet. But it was too late. The observation had begun. Reality was starting to solidify around the creature. The impossible angles of its body were collapsing into normal three-dimensional geometry. The parts of it that existed in other dimensions were being forced to choose one dimension and stay there. It was not dying. It was being simplified, being made into something that could exist properly in stable spacetime, being forced to follow the rules. The entity screamed. The sound was not physical. It was conceptual. It was the scream of something that had always been impossible suddenly being told it had to be possible instead. Stars trembled. Planets shook. But reality held firm because 1 million humans insisted it should. On one of the transport ships, Engineer Bora watched her instruments with fascination. The local quantum field is stabilizing. Spacetime is becoming more rigid. All the measurements are returning to normal. The entity is losing its dimensional variance. It is becoming ordinary. Ordinary was relative, of course. The thing was still the size of a moon and covered in teeth. But it was now made of normal matter that existed in normal space and followed normal physics, which meant the coalition could finally hurt it. Admiral Kane saw his opportunity. All ships fire everything. Target the entity now while it is vulnerable. The coalition fleet, which had been helpless moments ago, unleashed hell. Plasma cannons, fusion missiles, particle beams, gravity weapons, and dozens of other technologies struck the entity simultaneously. This time the attacks connected. Energy shields that did not exist before were overwhelmed. Strange flesh that violated biology caught fire. The creature bled substances that should not be possible but were. The entity tried to retreat back through the dimensional rift it had come from. But the rift was closing. Human observation was making reality too stable for it to remain open. The passage between dimensions sealed shut, trapping the horror in normal space where it was mortal. Lieutenant Kyung piloted a small fighter craft directly at the entity's largest eye. His ship was old and his weapons were weak, but none of that mattered. He fired his missiles and believed they would hit. His brain insisted that a simple missile could hurt this thing because why should it not? Matter was matter. Energy was energy. Physics applied to everything equally. The missiles struck and exploded, burning away a chunk of the entity's face. It was a tiny wound on something so massive, but it proved the point. The impossible creature could be killed by conventional means now. The battle lasted 3 more hours. It was brutal and costly. The coalition lost hundreds of ships, but they were winning. The entity grew weaker with every moment that humans continued to observe it and insist it be normal. Its impossible powers faded. Its dimensional defenses collapsed. Its violations of physics corrected themselves. Finally, Commander Yule led the final assault. His Krethian warriors boarded what remained of the creature and planted fusion charges throughout its body. When the charges detonated, the entity was torn apart. Its pieces drifted through space, just dead meat now instead of living impossibility. The Coalition had won, but only because humans made victory possible. In the aftermath, the Coalition Council met in emergency session. Envoy Rix presented the final casualty reports and her recommendations. The numbers were terrible. Millions had died across Coalition space from various dimensional incursions. But Sanctuary 7 survived because humans stabilized reality around it. We need them, Rick said simply. Not as members. Not as citizens. As anchors. As guardians against the chaos that is returning to our universe. Admiral Kane, who had opposed humanity just days earlier, now nodded slowly. Agreed. We create a new organization, human-led, funded by the Coalition but operating independently. Their mission is to monitor and contain dimensional anomalies, to stabilize reality wherever it becomes weak. What will we call this organization? Someone asked. Captain Taman, who had been invited to the session, spoke up. The Reality Stabilization Corps. We will go where reality is breaking down and fix it, or at least make it stable enough that your species can survive there. The motion passed unanimously. Within days, thousands of humans volunteered for the new corps. They understood what they were being asked to do. Not fight battles with weapons, but fight reality itself with observation and insistence. Private Daejung signed up immediately. So did Engineer Bora and Lieutenant Kyung. Dr. Hana became the Corps' chief science officer. Captain Taman took command of the entire organization. Commander Yule approached Taman privately after one of the planning meetings. The Krethian warrior looked at the human with a mixture of respect and lingering fear. I understand now, Yule said quietly. Why every scanner read non-threat? You are harmless to those who belong in this reality. You mean no harm to beings who follow the rules, but to anything that violates reality, anything that refuses to play by the laws of physics? He paused, searching for words. You are the most dangerous thing in the universe. Timon smiled. Not the dangerous smile this time. Just a tired, honest smile. We prefer to think of it as being really good at problem-solving, Commander. The universe has a problem. Reality is becoming unstable again. It is remembering that it does not have to follow rules. And humans are very good at reminding things what the rules are. Will you always be able to do this? What if reality becomes too unstable? What if even humans cannot hold it together? Then we adapt. That is what humans do best. We survived Earth when it made no sense. We will survive whatever the galaxy throws at us. We always do. Months passed. The Reality Stabilization Corps established bases near every known reality weak zone. Human teams monitored dimensional boundaries and responded to any instability. Whenever a rift began opening, humans arrived and observed it until it closed. Whenever entities tried crossing over, humans stared at them until they either stabilized or retreated. The other coalition species slowly accepted that humans were necessary. They still did not fully understand how human observation worked. Most preferred not to think about it too deeply. Accepting that reality was flexible was terrifying. Better to just trust that humans would keep it stable and not ask too many questions. Dr. Hana and Private Daejung stood in the observation deck of a new human facility built around the original derelict station. Human technicians worked on the quantum device, learning to control and understand it. They treated the impossible technology like ordinary equipment, because treating it as ordinary made it become ordinary. Do you think the other species will ever truly understand what we are? Daejung asked. Dr. Hana considered the question carefully. Would you want them to? Understanding us means accepting that their entire existence is contingent, that reality only works because enough beings believe it should, that the universe is more like a consensus than a law. That would drive most species insane. It sounds terrifying. It is. But humans learned to live with existential terror millions of years ago. We turned it into philosophy, religion, art, humor. We made it beautiful. Maybe that is what we really offer the coalition, not the ability to stabilize reality, but the ability to accept that reality was never stable to begin with and be okay with that. As they spoke, a nearby star flickered briefly. Just for a fraction of a second, it burned in a color that should not exist. The station's alarms did not trigger because engineer Boras saw it and unconsciously dismissed it as a sensor glitch. Reality smoothed itself out immediately. Every scanner throughout the facility still read all humans as non-threat. But now everyone in the galaxy knew what that really meant. Humans were no threat to reality. They were reality's immune system. They were the antibodies that kept the universe healthy and stable. Far away, in the deepest reaches of space beyond Coalition territory, something ancient stirred. It had noticed humanity's reality-warping presence spreading across the galaxy. It remembered the architects. It remembered why they had built their prisons so carefully. And it smiled, because it knew something the Coalition did not yet understand. Humans were powerful, yes. They could stabilize reality, yes. But they could also make it soft. They could make it flexible. They could remind the universe that rules were optional. And if something could convince humans to observe reality differently, to insist on different rules, to demand that physics work another way, well, then everything was possible again. The scanners still read non-threat, but the scanners were not watching the right thing anymore. They never had been.